Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us. Thank you for joining us on the program today. As mentioned, our guest is Ernest Giordani. He became a member of the faculty of Broome Community College in Binghamton, New York in 1969. He taught English composition, English as a second language, numerous literature courses, creative writing, and German. Retired full-time teaching in 1994, was awarded the status of Professor Emeritus in 1997. His new book, a collection of short stories we're talking about on today's program. The book is called Pocket Full of Tales. It's available at Amazon. Ernest, welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us on the show.
Thank you.
Enjoyed having the opportunity to read the book, Pocket Full of Tales. And it's interesting. It's a collection, as I mentioned, of short stories, 16 chapters in the book. And as I'm reading the short stories, I'm surprised at the turns that you've taken, or it really gets you thinking. In fact, sometimes I've gone back and read a couple of chapters like several times. What was the purpose when you put this collection together? Is that what you expect the reader to the emotions to have as they're reading the book?
Well, depends on which story we're talking about. For example, if you're doing At Water's Edge, my intent there is essentially to activate the unconscious contents and to take the reader through the trials and tribulations that the unidentified writer goes through.
Yes. Yeah, and that is a fascinating story, At Water's Edge. Talk sort of in general as we're talking here about the different stories and about the process in putting the book together. The book is called Pocket Full of Tales. Ernest Giordani is our guest on the program. The book is available at Amazon.com. Of course, you can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on directly to the website and get information on the book. When you're putting together a collection of short stories like this, again, how do you go about putting the collection together? How do you balance those that have the metaphors and really get us thinking, and those that scare us, and those that with strange twists and turns throughout the story? How do you put a collection of short stories together for a book like this?
Well, I taught creative writing at Broome Community College, and in doing that, we would talk about a number of stories other writers had written, and I'd analyze them, talk about them, and talk to the students about what techniques they used. And I said to myself, well, I can do this. And I'd written a number of stories myself, so I just sat back and wrote stories. Some that were old stories, some that were newer stories. I just went back and collected stories that I had written and worked them over again and put them together. Just put them together. No particular order here, except that there are two major stories. That one is the first one is the At Water's Edge, and the other one is the Big Guy. Those are two major stories, quite much longer than the others, and more deeply involved.
You know, it's interesting when you talk to authors and some who write short stories say it's really a misnomer. It's really not a short story. It almost takes me as long to put a good structure together for the story I'm trying to tell as though I was writing an actual novel. When you're putting together the story, do you find that to be true, or is it something that's rather quick in the process once you get started?
Well, having analyzed short stories, the shapes of short stories as I was teaching the short story in my literature courses, I see that I really don't have the same structure that they talk about, and it's more of an organic process that I go through. And I could go into a novel. I know that, for example, I could focus more on characterization in At Water's Edge and develop some of the characters, especially the female characters, and it could become more of a novel if I did that with that work, and also with the Big Guy that takes place on the east side of Binghamton, New York, and a number of taverns and restaurants, and I could really develop that.
Another short story you have in the book is called Pocket Full of Tales. It's available at Amazon.com. Go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and you can link on and get all the information on our guest in the program, Ernest Giordani. In the story, The Rescue is also written from a perspective of an observer in Binghamton, New York. Are a lot of these stories that you actually saw and just sort of mentally filed in your mind until you put them down on paper?
Yes, the rescue was a very interesting story in that as I was writing this story, one of the women at Broome Community College was diagnosed with cancer, and she died. And there was a ceremony for her, and I substituted. As a matter of fact, I dedicated it to her. So this woman who's rescued is she, as she moves out of the dark times of her life into the bright times of the deep south, which is really essentially death, but she's no longer suffering.
Yeah, in the book there are a number of metaphors such as that, and that's when I said in the beginning that there were stories that I would go back and either reread or sort of put the book away for a second and sort of go back and through my mind. Again, was that one of the purposes as you're writing these to get us to think when the story's over? Did it just end the way I think it did, or is there another meaning to the story? Was that part of what you were attempting to do, was to really open this up and get us to think?
Initially, I had no person in mind. Roberta Williams just steps into the story after some year or two after I had written it, so we dedicated it to her. But I just, it was just this process of getting out of the humdrum dullness of life, the torturous bad times, finally giving it up, saying, I'm done with this, I'm going to do something, is just what that story is about.
And that's part of the book, The Pocket Full of Tales. Ernest Giordani, our guest on the program. The book is available at Amazon.com and, of course, information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. What are some of the elements, do you think, that makes a good story? Again, you taught creative writing, but you found that the way you went about it a little different than some of the people that you would really researched and studied over the years. What are some of the elements that make for a good short story?
Well, you got to have conflict, some sort of conflict. Could be not necessarily physical conflict, but usually psychological conflict is what's going on. Psychological, emotional conflict is what you're dealing with primarily within a character or among characters, and that creates a sense of tension. This is all involving. I mean, even if you get into mystery writing, you're dealing with that sense of tension. But that's I think it's absolute. You got to have some kind of conflict.
Yeah, and one of the I talked about all the courses that you taught. One of the areas was psychological investigation in literature.
Yeah.
As you're working on putting these together, do you do it from an outline? I had read that a lot of what you, as you're putting the story together, a lot of images appear as you're processing the story and you're seeing sort of as you go along. How do you put the story together? Is it an outline, or do you sort of sit back and sort of imagine this particular scenario and go where the images take you?
I work more organically. I have a general idea, general sense.
Yes.
And then it grows, and I put it on paper, and it grows from it. As one image calls up another image, one notion, another notion. And then I focus, then I shape. But really, it's activation of unconscious feelings, emotions, contents that I work from.
In addition, you've got a fascinating career. In addition to teaching at the community college, you spent some time in the United States Army in Germany
Yes.
during the early 60s, a veteran of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And in fact, we did a story, for some reason, I forget the overall topic, but we got talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis a couple of weeks ago and how close we actually came to all-out war during that period.
Right.
And you were there. Did you sense how close we were to actually letting the situation get out of hand?
Oh, definitely, because I had my wife was there and my firstborn daughter was there, and they had to send them home, and I had to go back into the barracks because trucks were getting ready and we were getting
Wow.
lining up the border, and it was and my landlord was saying, he was wringing his hands. We lived with a German family. He was very worried. It was tough. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then you were a member of the 12th Military Historical Detachment, putting together unfolding history in Europe. Talk about doing that. You were sort of had an inside seat, actually, behind the scenes on actually history during that period.
Yeah, I was not an officer, so I was an enlisted man. I had gone to the Army Language School in Monterey, California, where they taught me to speak Lithuanian. They sent me to Germany, fairly close to Lithuania. Perhaps maybe we would get a few escapees, but that never happened. They went across the Baltic into the northern, Denmark and so on.
Right.
I never saw any Lithuanians while I was there, but they placed me in. They had an opening in the 12th Military Historical Detachment, so they put me there, and so I was involved in going from G1, G2, G3, G4, and looking at documents and taking from documents important information that shows development within the various Gs or what's going on. But I didn't deal very heavily with top secret material. The officers dealt with the high stuff. I gave them a break. In other words.
It's interesting, and I would assume, and that's one of the benefits of writing the book later in your career. But I'm assuming that all of these experiences that you've had, and I want to touch in a second on one as a writer with Connecting Link magazine, all of these experiences sort of mold who you are today as a writer, and being able to look back on these experiences.
Oh, of course, yes, right. No doubt about that.
The book is Pocket Full of Tales. Ernest Giordani is our guest on the program. The book's available at Amazon.com. And I mentioned that, the writing you did for Connecting Link magazine, and writing releases about the Lunar Landing Module simulation. Just several questions. I mean, you've had a chance to do actual writing where it was almost like a press release type of writing. Talk about doing that, and then the pleasure of actually creating your own world when you're writing the short stories.
I'm not sure. I was writing for Singer Link, and these were essentially news releases about various items, various projects they were involved in, and then of course they were involved in the lunar landing module. They were involved in that, so I had to write a news release or two for those, because that would take me to the various areas where they were working on it, and I'm talking to the engineers about the project, and then of course, well, that was, I mean, as far as that, but that's more of a very reporting writing as opposed to creative writing.
Yeah, with the creative writing, you get to create your own universe, which you've done in your stories in the book, Pocket Full of Tales. I touch on a couple briefly here. Going Home. This is one where, well, it's interesting, and I read it twice. Talk a little bit about the setup on that, and is my reaction sort of typical that I read that a couple of times to make sure I had the meaning correct?
Let me see now. Going Home.
Yeah, that was the payphone, the lady that was about to leave to return home and got change and put it in the.
No, that was okay. That's the one. That's the one that's dedicated to Roberta. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. And that was no. That was the other one. It was Roberta, right?
Yes. Yes.
That was the one where she's the one who was diagnosed with cancer. She had just gone to actually pick out her own casket. We were talking about that. You know, she said not very many people who are dying get a chance to go pick out their own casket, but she did that. She's taking her death very, very matter of factly, and so that's the story I read before the faculty in dedication after she died to her. That was I confused that? Oh, The Rescue. No, that's different. The Rescue, yeah.
Yeah, the book, all these stories are in Pocketful of Tales, and they're fascinating stories. Again, you will be surprised at the turns as you're reading through that. When it's over with, you'll stop and reflect a little bit on what you just had the opportunity to read. Are you working on a new set of short stories?
Right now, no, I'm not. What am I doing? I've been just. I'm working on. I'm reading some heavy stuff. A book by Dr. Dennis McCourt called "Going Beyond the Pairs." He was a faculty. He's a faculty member. Was a faculty member of Syracuse University. I took a couple of courses with him in when Kafka and the other one in Romanticism. So he's got a book out, and it's a very heavy book, very interesting book, and I'm working my way through that. I don't know how that's going to interact with my psyche and what comes out of that, but who knows? It may push me to write something. I'm not sure.
What kind of response have you been getting with Pocketful of Tales? And I would think it'd be interesting to find out what former students had a chance to say after they were able to read the book.
Well, I have not been teaching for a while, so I don't know how many students have read the book. A few have, but they liked it. My sister read the book, and she told some of her friends, and they contacted me and told me how much they liked the book. But it's been a while since the book's been out, and I haven't had that much response to it.
Yeah, the book is Pocketful of Tales. It's available at Amazon, and I know there's a promotional a push now to get people to interested in reading the book, and it's getting good reviews from the people that have had a chance to read the stories. Pocketful of Tales. What's it like as someone who's been involved in writing basically all of their adult lives to actually write a book and pick up the book for the first time and see Pocketful of Tales is actually, wow, this is my book and it's got a nice cover on it. My stories are in here. What was like? Was there great satisfaction when you were able to publish the book?
Oh yes, I was particularly happy with the cover. They did a good job.
Yes.
It's amazing how much of the cover I had in my mind, and they came up with a very, very, very nice job. And actually, I was thinking of Ingmar Bergman in his Death of the Sign of the Seventh Seal, and that horizon there.
Yes.
And that pretty much captures that.
Well, it's a very nice cover, and that you really need the cover to get people interested, especially in a bookstore as they're browsing and they're looking. And then the stories inside are very thought-provoking. They're very well done. The book is called Pocketful of Tales. Ernest Giordani has been our guest on the program. The book is available at Amazon.com. And, of course, we'll have information on our website, thisweekinamerica.us, where you can log on directly into Ernest's website and get information on the book as well. Ernest, a pleasure to have you on the program. Good luck with Pocketful of Tales, and a pleasure to have you with us today.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're listening to This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us.